Hi y'all, welcome back to my shop. Today we got a fun project today inspired by Jason Breach of Axminster Tools. Uh, it's going to be a mood owl. It's a bit of a challenge because we're going to turn this head multi-axis to get the eyes. The fun thing about this project is the swivel head, and that's of course one of the challenges too, but you can make him look inquisitive or make him look turn side, maybe look guilty or happy. You know, just changing the position of the head can make a lot of difference. So for the block of wood we're going to use today, any dry wood will work, but you want a piece about 2 inches square by about 6 inches long, approximately. You can either cut off the part that's going to be head on the bandsaw, but I find the way that I'm going to show you is the quickest and easiest for me, and that's just mount it between centers. So first thing we're going to do is just turn it around. We're going to put a tenon on this end. Get the speed up a couple of thousand. Use a beading parting tool for making a tenon. That's my go-to tool for this process. Make a tenon that's suitable for your particular chuck. Double check it here. Actually, I can go a little bit smaller. Now let's go ahead and put the blank in the chuck. I didn't get it completely round yet, so let's bring up tailstock support and go ahead and refine it a little bit. Just a little bit of bark inclusion here, so I want to get rid of that, and I think I'm just going to look around for some dust, wood dust, and just put in a little bit of, a little CA glue on that spot, let it dry. A little more dust here in the corner. And we'll give that just a moment to dry. Okay, we're going to put a little bit of a tenon. I'll call it a tenon, but it's really getting rid of some of the wood that part of our design. We don't want to be surprised by having this damage from the livestock at the end. So let's just go ahead and take that down a little bit, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Now we're going to measure the diameter of where we are, and I'm using these calipers because I want to measure from here. This diameter, set it to that diameter. I can just go ahead and use these calipers by just bringing this up against the edge and pressing in. And that's left a nice scribe mark right there. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring this down. Switch to a little smaller tool before it starts binding. Now, if you've turned a lot of spheres, you can freehand this sphere project, but I think it's going to be, for me, I've done a lot of spheres that way, but I'm going to switch to the mat. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to measure that distance, and it winds up being exactly 2 inches, 50 millimeters. So we're going to scribe a line of 29% of the diameter on each side. So to figure out what that is, we can either pull out a calculator or we can turn to our assistant. Alexa, what's 29% of 50?
29% of 50 is 14.5.
So she tells me it's 14.5, so let's just go ahead and measure that. All right, so we're going to take a line that's that same 14.5 millimeter, and that's going to be the from the center. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Probably be easier for me to use some calipers that don't shift on me. So let's use these calipers here, and it's going to be just above the tenon we've got set. I'll scribe that line right here. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to scribe that line on the inside, a little harder to see, but it's going to be the same. Now, what we're going to do is, there's a couple of diameters that we don't want to mess with, and that's the line in the middle, which we haven't drawn, but I'm going to visually sight between these two lines and draw the middle. That's going to be the maximum diameter, and this line is going to be a maximum diameter when we make an adjustment. So we're going to cut from the end. We're going to cut a line from here down to this line here, and it's going to be a straight cut. So here's how we're going to do it. We can knock off some of the wood, but we don't want to make it round. We want to make it straight. So we're just going to turn it up like that and push a straight flat in the line in which we want to go. Again, being careful not to erase this line. Change the direction here a little bit, a little more down the bottom. Whoop! Didn't mean to do that. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, now we've got the rough making. Now we're going to scribe another line halfway between here and here. We're just going to visually mark it. And then again, we're going to do the flat. We're going to cut halfway between here and here. Same thing on the other side, and halfway between here and here. So let's take this down just a little bit more. And we're going to cut halfway from here to here on that same angle. And we're going to do the same thing here along the flat. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side, get this flat. And this flat. And now we've got a rough sphere. So now we're going to go ahead and finish the shaping. Actually, we come along every place we've got a flat and do it one more time. Just come right across that flat and the bottom. And now we're just going to, I'm going to switch to a spindle gouge, not as pointy. One that's got more of a fingernail shape, or shovel shape. So I'm keeping this reference line and this reference line to kind of keep us honest. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and just we're going to go ahead and get rid of that line. We're going to go ahead and get rid of this line. And we've got the makings of a pretty good sphere. We go ahead and start our sanding here. I think I'll do that. I'll do some rough sanding here at you know, a coarse grit, maybe 120. I'm going to try to leave that center line there. We're going to use that. Got a little bit of a bulge there. I'm going to cut away right here. Okay. When the tool quits cutting, it's time to sharpen it. This sandpaper is a tool. Let me throw that away and get one that's a little better shape. Okay, now I'm going to part off, get rid of this little knob right here, and I think I'm going to do that with just using this thin parting tool. That'll be close enough. Go back to that spindle gouge. Take care of that. Okay. Now we're going to part it off on this other end. Before I part it off, I think I want to do a little more shaping. I can probably again do that with a skew following that curve. Go ahead and switch that thin parting tool to make it a little easier. I'm running a little over 1,000, which is not bad speed to part off a small project like this. Okay. And I've got a little tiny. Now, depending on how round this is or how much work it needs, depends on the next step. And I think for this, it probably needs a little more work. It's not perfectly round, so I'm going to put it between cup chucks before we go to the next step. If you're unfamiliar with how to make a cup chuck, click on the link in the upper right hand corner for my video on turning cup chucks for spheres. So I'm going to install some cup chucks. I'm going to go ahead and remove this the base of the owl temporarily. We'll come back to that in a moment. Here's the cup chucks I'm going to use. I've turned a mandrel. This is slightly concave. It's got a little piece of leather, and we just pop it in there. I've got one that's drilled that'll just slip over top of my live center like this. It's concave, and it's got a little bit of fun foam to hold this. So I'm going to orient this. Here's where I've got that little bit of a bump. I'm going to use this line to kind of orient it right down the middle. And then we're just going to cut away that bump first, then we're going to do a little more sanding. And again, we're going to switch back to my spindle gouge for that. And it looks like it's running fairly true. So we're just going to ease across the front here. And that bump is gone. Now we're going to just go ahead and actually still got a little bit of a surface area there that I need to refine. So let's hit it one more time. Spots. Looking at the ghost image. slow the speed down a little bit. Now let's just do a little bit of sanding. And now we have the head of our owl. And the next step, we're going to work on the eyes. So we're going to set this aside and start working on those eyes. So here's where we're going with this. We're trying to make us a dowel out of a dark wood, such as a walnut. You can use a pen blank if you got it. It could be smaller than 3/4, but that's a common size, and that's the size that I have that I've got to reduce. So we're going to reduce it down to that, and we're going to drill a hole in it and put a lighter colored wood. So we're going to size this. You know, I'm going to use the 3/8 of an inch drill bit. I'm going to drill a hole with and make it kind of a sloppy fit and rough size it to that. Get the speed up some. Now we could try to size this perfectly to 3/8, but I'm going to use a shortcut approach. And I'm going to use a plug cutter in a drill chuck, and we're going to use that to size the 3/8 inch plug. I'm just going to bring it up, bring it in, and cut that to a 3/8 inch size. Cut it flat so we can drill a hole. We'll use a skew for that. Kind of face it off. Actually, we're going to make a tiny little divot. Tiny little divot, drill bit. And we're going to use it. We're going to use a 3/16. I'm grabbing the wrong drill bit. We're going to use a 3/16 inch drill bit and drill a hole in here for our lighter colored wood dowel. Drill that 3/16 inch hole. Slow the speed down a little bit to a little over 1,000. Slowly feed it in. So grab whatever chuck that you've got that hold a small scrap. It could be something as large as 3/4 if you don't have a really tiny one, and you can just bring it down. But we're going to turn a small piece, in this case piece of maple, down to 3/16 of an inch to match that hole we drilled. So we just size it against our drill bit like that, and that's what I'm going to use as a reference. And I'm going to use a skew to size this. High speed. I think I'm going to bring up some tailstock support, keep this thing from dancing a little bit. I'm going to use this, and just help stabilize it. This is at 90-degree cone instead of a 60-degree cone, and I'm just going to barely touch it, and then it'll help stabilize it, I think. Now we can start bringing this down. .120 grit sandpaper and just kind of pinch it to get it down to that final size. See how that works. I need to come back to the skew. Just test fit it. This looks like it's going to fit just fine. The spout on my CA is getting a little thick, so I put a little bit on this old credit card, and we're just going to sop it on here like this. And we're just going to twist it on. And then I think I'm going to tap it in from here. Okay. That's about as far as we need to go with that. Okay, I think we've got this thing dried enough. It's probably could go further, but I don't think we'll sling it onto my safety glasses here. Alright, now we're just going to start cutting little plugs. They don't have to be very deep, very long. And I'm going to cut these with a thin parting tool. It's a 1/16 of an inch tool, and that's good. And the trick is, can I catch these things before they hit the floor? Ooh. We're just going to taper the back end just a little bit. I think at this point, use flush cut saw so I don't have to chase it around the floor. So let's just do that. So there's the first eye. Now the challenge is the multi-axis approach we've got to use to cutting these eyes and drilling these holes. There's several different approaches, and I'll talk about your options, see which works best for you. If you've got a vacuum chuck, it's possible that you could use a vacuum chuck. It's got to be perfectly round to seal, and frankly, you can't get a lot of suction on something that small. Just for laughs, we might kind of give that a try, see what kind of suction we get, but I'm not going to hold out too much hope for it. The other option that can be the easiest, but can be the most difficult, and that's cutting a jam chuck. You've got to make it deeper than the radius of this. So this is almost perfectly 50 millimeter. So you probably want to go something like 30 millimeter deep to hold it, and that can be a challenge. Another approach that can work for some people is to make a collet chuck, and it's a little bit like this, but more of a closed-in form. See how this even looks on this, and we can see that it's not really going to fit real well in this. I'd have to make a new collet chuck, but you're going to take a small square of wood, say something like this, put it between centers, turn it around, and you're going to put a long tenon on it because it needs to match a long set of jaws. So the jaws that I used on this are these 75 millimeter bowl jaws, because they're very deep and provide a very, very secure hole for that long tenon that you're gonna need. So that's one approach. Once you turn this round, put the tenon on it, you've got to hollow this out, and then you're going to take it over to the bandsaw and cut it in half. You want to cut out. You want to size this for your jaws to be fairly open, so you'll have room to do some compression. If you got several of them, you might want to mark them so they don't get confused, because they all kind of may look alike. The other approach that can work very well if you have it, but it's a lot of trouble to make one, that's a donut chuck. I have one on hand and it'll work. It's used to make one-piece coffee scoops, and you can make a new donut to fit if necessary. But I think this will I can get this in there. But let's experiment. Let's try to put it in a vacuum chuck and see if we can draw a vacuum. Okay, so here it is, mounted in the vacuum chuck. Now let's see what kind of vacuum we can pull on this. So I've got my vacuum up on the wall just near the tailstock. Let's home in on the vacuum gauge, which shows the number of inches of mercury. I turn it on, and I'm not getting much, but then when I start reducing the bleed, I get it up to about as high as I get on anything. Now, how well it holds, I don't know. Let's just try it and see. Okay, first thing we want to do is get the side that you want to put the eyes on, and I suggest your best bet is the face grain, not rings. You want to get a line across the center. Let's see if we can draw one. You want to orient it vertically the way the eyes are going to go. So I'm going to draw this line right across the center here. And that's going to, the eyes are going to fall on that line. Now the next thing we've got to do is figure out how big that eye ought to be. And I'm suggesting that the diameter of the eye is going to be somewhere around 60% of the diameter of your object. So in this case, the knob that we've got here is 50 millimeter. So 60% of that, we're going to have a diameter of the eye of about 30 millimeter and a radius of 15. So I've got this compass set on 15, and we also want to mark the center of this. That's what and we want a very slight overlap on the eyes. At least I do. You may choose less overlap or than I've chosen, but I want some overlap. So I'm going to bring this out here, and actually 15 might be a little large. Let's reduce it just a little bit. And I'm going to bring this out here, and then that point right there, I'm just going to dig in to mark it, and then I'm going to come over here on this side and mark it over here. And that's going to be the center of that eyeball. So we're going to now orient this. We're going to take this loose, and we're going to orient it. We'll bring up the tailstock to do that. We're going to orient it on that hole. I'm going to use a awl and make that hole a little bit larger. Make it a little easier to get my live center on it. Same thing on this side. Okay. We'll lightly put this in here. It might be easier for me to do it this way. Line it up here, and then use that to try to hopefully center this. And I hope it's centered. Okay, so I'm still going to provide some tailstock support, I think, for my initial shaping. So I think the first thing I want to do is maybe draw a circle around that eye to see what it looks like, and crossing the center. So let's hold pencil in place and draw that eye. And that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and draw the other eye. Just, you don't have them both drawn. I've found it's a bit of a challenge to get them the right size and in the right orientation. So that looks pretty good. Again, we're trying to get this thing I think I drew that right at the center, so without any overlap, which might have been a mistake. Okay, that's not too bad. Now let's just kind of check it with calipers to see if they're about the same. One looks bigger than the other, so I don't know what's going on there. So let's, all right, this came out right at 30. And this one appears to be a little bit larger, so I need to take that into account on the next step. So the next step is going to be flattening this out. We're going to start that without the vacuum so you can hear me talk. We're just going to use the spindle gouge. And here goes. want these eyes just slightly concave or almost flat. Okay, that looks pretty good. It looks smooth. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bead right there, similar to the one I have here. I think this bead looks so much better than just that ring that I did on this one. And I think the contrasting eyes are so much better than just coming in there with a parting tool and making a round pupil out of the wood. But that is an option. There's more than one way to cut this bead, but I think the easiest for this on this round is going to be using a small beading tool. In this case, I'm using a 1/8 inch D-Wade beading tool. Just going to engage right on that line. Handle low. Walk it back and forth. And we've scraped a very nice bead here. I think I probably want to come in with that spindle gouge and cut out this a little bit more. So actually we've done this by using this as a jam chuck without even having to turn the vacuum on. So next thing we're going to do is we've got to drill that 3/8 inch hole for the eye plug. Okay, so we haven't disturbed this, so this is cutting right on center. Going to slow the speed down, and we don't need to cut it very deep, just deep enough to hold that plug securely with a little glue. Speed up a little bit, maybe somewhere around 600, and just slowly come in. Slowly pull it out. Alright, now I'm going to sand this before we go any further. So I'm going to use a little 240 grit, going to take care of it. Give any rough surface. Got a pencil line here on this ring somewhere, and it's dug in a little bit on one side, so I want to soften that edge a little bit. While I got it, I think maybe I'll go ahead and step up to 320 grit. But I think I'm going to glue in that plug before we go any further. Okay, it's kind of a sloppy fit. Not real happy with that, but it is what it is. We're going to have glue going everywhere. I think what I'm going to go ahead and use some carpenter's glue and let it set, maybe swell the fibers a little bit. Nah, I'll just use CA glue, it'll be faster. So let's just take this chuck off so we can have it in a vertical position like this. We're going to use some thick CA, put a few drops in there and go to it. Speed this up a little bit. I think I'm going to put a little accelerator on the bottom of the plug. Okay, and now let's put in the plug. We'll just push it down in there. See if we got it roughly centered. We've got a uniform gap maybe. Okay, and now we're just going to let that dry a little bit. And I'm going to turn this eye around with this very small detail, 1/4 inch detail gouge. Let's turn the vacuum on and go to it. Turn the speed up a bit, and then just gradually turn this around. Okay, there we go. Now I just want to touch it up with a little bit of sandpaper. Now we're going to use a little 400 grit. That looks pretty good. Now we do the whole thing on, once more in the other eye. I'm not going to show the whole operation, but I'm going to do the other eye on the jam chuck and see what happens, and we'll just get started with it and see how it goes. And I can report at the end how it went. The other one is 29. I mean, I do work with my jam, I use the friction chuck. It's fine. Very close. The infection built, my that's okay. I'm going to take this up just a little bit more before we go. Too fast. So now we're going to carve the beak. I'm using a wood carving tool, and I'm just going to, since I drew that line through there, that made it a little easier to get the corner of the beak. And you got to be careful not to get any of the skin in front of that cutting tool because it's very sharp. Now I'm just going to set that cut with this tool. Extend that up here a little bit. Okay, now get the tool rest out of the way. I'm just going to come in here and carve underneath that beak so it'll stand proud. After you finish carving the nose, wrap you some sandpaper around a fairly sharp edge crisp where you can get in there and kind of fine tune the sanding a little bit. And it doesn't take much, doesn't look like. You can use any kind of finish you want on this, but I would seal this with something like sanding sealer, cellulose sanding sealer, in order that you don't darken the pupils. If you use an oil finish, it might amber the thing so much you lose some of that contrast. Okay, now comes the easy part. That's turning the base. First thing we're going to do is true it up. Now we're going to do a slight concave on the inside here, the spindle gouge. Now once we get it started, we're going to smooth that out with a round nose scraper because that's the easiest way to get that nice curve we're looking for. Scraper, handle up. Okay, let's see how we're doing. You want it to be deep enough, but solid. Okay. Now we're going to shape the shoulder down with a spindle gouge. I finished shaping the rest of it, and now it's time to do a little sanding. Some options you might want to try on yours is you could possibly dye the the head and the body first before you turn off the eyes, so you'll have that light colored contrasting area. For eyes, you can buy eyes for teddy bears. A lot of folks make teddy bears. You can buy those off Amazon. I don't think they'd look quite as nice, but certainly if you were producing a lot of them, it'd be a lot faster and easier. One I saw, someone made a mortar board as a gift to a recent graduate, so that's an option. If you like this project, you might be interested in something similar, this Danish bird with the long beak, and you turn the shape so you can turn it right side up or upside down. The eyes are a little bit different in that you have kind of a half a pupil, so if you're interested in that, check out the video I've got here. And remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back, yeah?